you know, I don't think it's a task at all to drive up to the North Country. It's so beautiful up here. How could you possibly not enjoy every single minute of it? It's a great trip. And Ralph Collins, I just want to say how much I appreciate your efforts to put this thing together, and I want to especially thank you for letting me join you this evening. You know, we are talked about, both Governor Huckabee and myself and a couple of others, we are always identified as second-tier candidates. And it's been interesting kind of to figure out what that really means when you start analyzing it and how it plays out on the political stage. And one way it comes home to you, I guess, is when things like the following happen to you. I was asked to attend an event. I was asked, actually, every Republican candidate for running for president was asked to go and speak to the NAACP convention in Detroit, Michigan. Well, we got the invitation, and although we thought it was somewhat odd, the fact is that all of us were invited, so what the heck, absolutely, I said sure when I was asked whether I wanted to go. Dave Buchanan, who's my campaign manager nationwide, and Shelley Zinski here is her counterpart in the state of New Hampshire. And so they said, "Do you want to do this thing?" I said, "Sure, absolutely." So I went, and I got off the plane, and in New Hampshire, I didn't have much, well, in fact, I had no entourage. I was the only person. And got into a cab, and I still had jeans on, and baseball cap, I guess. It was probably Rockies. And so I sat down, and I was driving in with the cab driver, and he said, we started the conversation, as is always the case, often the case, I should say, in these situations. You just start talking about, why you're there, what you're doing. And he said, "So what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I've come to speak to the NAACP." He's a black fellow, and spoke very precise English, by the way. And he just waited for a moment, and he said, "Oh yeah? Why?" And I said, "Why?" "Well, because they invited me." He waited for another minute or two, and he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because I'm running for president of the United States." He goes, "Nah." "Yeah, you're joking." I said, No, it's true, I really am. I know it may be hard to believe, but it is true that that's what I'm doing. So we started talking about the fact that I was in Congress and that sort of thing, and he finally got used to the idea that, yes, in fact, I was actually running for president of the United States. And it was interesting because he picked up this bunch of papers that he had sitting next to him. And as I said, he was speaking very precise English, and you could tell that it was, he was someone who was learning the language. It turns out he was from the Ivory Coast, and he was an immigrant, and he was about ready to take his test to see whether or not he could become an American citizen. And he started saying, "Wow, Congress, I know, 435 members of the House, 100 members of the Senate." And he went through this list of things about, what we had, what American government was all about. And I said, if I could pull over here for a second and ask, just roll down the window and ask anybody to come over here and ask them the same questions that you're going to be asked, I bet you, 3 out of 4 won't be able to answer them. But this guy was very proud, very happy, very excited about becoming an American. And you know what? So was I. Very proud of him, very excited for him, because he was becoming an American. Becoming an American. Now that is something I do want to talk to you about tonight, because I have to tell you that this is becoming an interesting dilemma to a certain extent. Identifying what it really means. What that is. Now this guy had evidently worked hard, had waited a long time, had gone through a process. He told me it took him almost 2 years since the time that he actually got his visa to come to the United States to get to the point where he was actually going to be taking the test and eventually, hopefully, becoming a citizen. And the fact that he had waited that long, the fact that he had tried that hard, was an indication of how important that was to him. And I worry, and I sometimes think about today about the fact that we don't really recognize the importance of that thing called that idea, that descriptor called America, what it really means, what it's all about. And that is one of the reasons why I do speak on this issue and this topic at length sometimes, and probably sometimes I know I go on too long about it, because people say, well, you're a one-issue candidate. You talk about immigration all the time. Well, let me tell you that it is not just an issue. Immigration itself is a phenomenon. And under it, there are a whole bunch of issues. And this is just one. What it means to be an American. And yes, I will talk about this at length because, and every time I'm given the opportunity, because just what happened that day when I got in that car and talked to that guy, and he was so excited about this opportunity. I told him, I said, if I were here, I think July 19th, he was going to be taking I think he was, that was the point he was actually going to be getting his citizenship. I said, I would be happy to come to your event. I wish I were here at that time. I would be excited about doing that. And I go in Colorado, I often go to events of this nature where we are, giving out the certificates for citizenship to people who have just become new American citizens. And I always say I have two messages for you. One is, welcome to America. The other one is, thank you for doing it the right way. And that's what is so important, is that there is a way, and we have, I know our nation, we are often described as a nation of immigrants, and of course, it's true to a certain extent, although frankly, 75, 77% of us right now in this country were born here. So I consider myself, by the way, to be a Native American. I will fight that out with anybody. I was born here, so were my parents. Okay? But nonetheless, we have a history. It is true. We have an immigration-related history that is significant. But it is also important to understand that history is one of a constant cycle where we had periods of very high immigration into the country, then followed by periods of very low immigration rates. And what we did is we used the period of very low immigration rates to actually assimilate people who had come during the periods of very high immigration rates. And that is what I fear is not happening today, I have to tell you. And so I do want to I know we're moving quickly to this issue, but I have to tell you it is enormously important. Because all of the other things we talk about as candidates, Republican candidates for president, I mean, for the most part, we're pro-life. And there are degrees of that. And some people have recently decided that they're pro-life.